2025, the year of the Stark Varg.
Welcome to a new video series about my 2025 experience with the Stark Varg. It's been a full year of riding, experimenting, learning, and yes, a big crash along the way. It is time to find out what this electric machine is really like in the real world. Hey! Is the Stark Varg battery enough for a day at the track? Part 2. Let us first do a quick recap of Part 1 video. I created a simple rule of thumb. We take the percentage and divide it by 2, and then that is roughly how many minutes you can ride. So a full battery, 100%, you can ride around 50 minutes. And because 50 minutes is not enough, we have to charge the bike during our breaks. In part 1 I've given some ride charge schedules, how that looks like in time. In this part 2 video we're going to deep dive into the battery consumption. Let's go. The battery usage, that is influenced by several factors. The number one, for instance, could be the rider weight, the rider skill, the maximum horsepower that I set the bike in, the engine brake, and the type of track, the track condition, and maybe temperature. We're going to look more closer to these points to see how that is influenced. Now, let's look at the rider's weight, for instance. If that impacts the battery consumption. To be honest, I did not have real data for this, but I think here we can apply a little bit of physics, because I think it is pretty one-on-one with physics. I weigh 75 kilograms, and with gear you could say I weighed 80 kilograms, and the bike itself, it weighs 120. So in total we have 200 kilograms. And to drive this 200 kilograms we use 2% per minute. Let's say on average. Let's say all of a sudden I'm going to get way more heavier. 30 kilograms heavier. So instead of 75 I'm weighing 95. And that means I'm 100 kilogram with gear and then still 120 kilogram for the bike. And if you look at what then the consumption will be, that is just proportional to the total weight. So it's not my weight only. So, and if you do that calculation, well, then the increase is 10%. So it's 2.2% per minute. So yes, the rider weight will influence the battery usage, but it's not so much. I don't think so. And you could argue that maybe if you are also more heavier, you would have a little bit more friction as well. You go deeper into the sand. But again, I do not believe that will be more than, again, 5 or 10%. Okay, let us look at rider skill. The rider skill will influence the battery consumption, and that's why I created the following diagram. It is 4 rides on March 23, and we are going to ignore the first ride. We're only going to focus on the last 3. And you can see I used 2% per minute for those 2 rides. Yeah, the number 2 and the number 4. It was 10 minutes and 13 minutes. But in between, you see someone else drove my Stark Varg, and it was Anko. And Anko used 2.8% per minute. So that is significantly higher. He drove it for 16 minutes. But I think the comparison is pretty okay, because these are 4 rides on the same day. Or you could look at the last 3, so 3 rides on the same day. So track is the same. We had the same setting on the bike. We both had it on max 50 horsepower. And yeah, Anko is also the same height almost as me, same weight almost as me. So yeah, it's not really that different from him than from me. And yeah, the only thing what I can conclude, and you see that a little bit in this table, yeah, he's just able to gas it more than I am. Yeah, I'm more chicken. So you see on the top table here there that it is just a little bit lower for him, for me, than it is for him. Well, yeah, but it means that the rider skill will influence how much you will use battery per minute. Yeah, and I think so. Your rider skill will also say something. Should you buy or should you not buy a Stark Varg? Simple as that. The next thing is the maximum horsepower that is set. You see here a diagram of one ride. It's the let's say the drain of the battery over time. And you see that in the top part, yeah, I have it set to maximum of 45 horsepower. And you see that the percentage is 1.36% per minute. So that is really limited. But if you look to the second part, so on this level, I set the bike to 50 horsepower, and it turns out I also gassed it more. And then I used 2.29% per minute. Yeah, I did a lot of rides like this, so a few minutes on 45 horsepower, and then after that I switched it to the higher horsepower. But if you look at the way the line is going down, at the end you see sort of going up, because I was getting tired. I could not handle the bike anymore, yeah, at 50 horsepower. So the setting for your horsepower will influence the amount of percentage per minute a lot. Let's look at another topic, and that is the engine brake. You can set up the engine brake on this bike, and the braking is regenerative. That means that if you let go of the gas, it means it's charging the battery, yeah, when it is braking, so to say. I think that in theory, you gas the bike, you let it flow a little bit, so you let go of the gas, let's say half or something, and when you're at the corner, you let go, so you're braking. So if you could use that energy of braking to charge the battery, well, you could say it will influence the amount of battery usage, so to say. I did not have any data to support that. Why did I not experiment with this? That is because if you change this engine brake higher, yeah, that influences quite dramatically how the bike feels. Yeah, and I'm coming from a two-stroke, and if I have a lot of engine brake, that doesn't make sense to me at all. Yeah, let's listen to what I had to say about the engine brake in a few videos.
This Wednesday was the first time that I was driving, and yeah, it's really getting used to it, I have to say. Figuring out the engine brake. By default, the engine brake is 60%, but it's way too high for me. It feels like driving four-stroke. Sorry guys, I'm not used to that. I always drive the two-stroke, so now I'm back to 30%. That feels more natural to me. So, third time driving with Stark. I'm driving with 30% engine brake. For me that feels okay. It feels like riding the three-stroke, so it's nice.
Now that I have driven the two-stroke a few times now, so I was sort of used to it again. The strange thing is that if I drive my Stark again, I had it braking on 30%, though the track was really sticky today, but it felt like it was braking even harder as normal. Could be. I even reduced the braking from 30 to, I think, 25%, something like that. Let's look at another thing, and that is the type of track. The type of track will have influence on the consumption, and for that I created the following table. You see here different tracks that I drove last year, and let's say the average consumption that I had on those tracks. I also inserted a little bit the table here below, because it is not that every track I did the even amount of rides, so the accuracy of the numbers are not 100% the same. But what we do see is that if we have a hard track, yeah, then the consumption is way lower. Yeah, I did not expect it to be so much different. I did expect it to be different, but not so much. And we see that soft tracks, the sand tracks, yeah, then you're typically always on 2% per minute. And that is also my rule of thumb that I've given you.
So here we go again. Another training on the track in Landsard.
Okay, we survived the day. For the first time, now that I driving the Stark since this year, I really had the feeling that the
capacity of the battery is too low. So for all of you who consider a Stark, this track is a ascent track, and yeah, that even I got a pedal tire on, it just drains the battery too fast. So I skipped one of my lesson sessions, so to say, and after that there was some free riding. I don't know how long that I did, but I charged it again. It was not a lot, I think somewhere in the 30, 35 or something. That's what I started with. And I drained it to 1%. I think it was a session of 10 minutes or something. Maybe 15, but I don't think so. So this track that I did with the Stark, capacity is simply too low. So Stark, make a battery that can last even longer.
Next to the type of track, I think the track condition also has quite some influence on the usage of the battery. And what I did for this, I created a sort of histogram, but then only for the rides at my local track. So else you cannot really compare that. And that is 34 rides, so that is pretty, no, that's for histogram good enough, so to say. And you could say in the middle of the curve, that is where, let's say, the average value is. And for this track and last year, that was 1.84% per ride. And so it's a little bit below the 2% what I give as the rule of thumb. Yeah, but yeah, you see that on this track, it can deviate up to 0.5%, yeah, what you use per minute. Yeah, so on a bad day, you could say it can go up to 2.3, 2.4% per minute. Yeah, but if it is a hot day, the other way around, and the track is nice and smooth, yeah, then it can be as low as 1.5. Yeah, so yeah, you see that the track condition really has some influence on the consumption. And personally, I feel that the amount of moisture that is in a track is the most determining factor. The one thing that I need to explain about this graph is maybe the purple stuff that you see in there, because that represents the first laps that I did on a day. And the first lap I often do with less horsepower, and I do it short. So you see that in this graph you can clearly see that it is, if you look at the shape, the average is a little bit lower during those rides. But it is also, I use less horsepower. You can see that again in this shape. Yeah, it's more to the lower end, so to say. Now, the next thing that I wrote down, that was this one, and that is temperature. It is well known from, let's say, electric cars and electric bicycles that the efficiency of the battery depends on the outside temperature. Yeah, so I thought, well, can we visualize that? So I created a graph here, and then the red line, yeah, that represents the average day temperature, so to say, and then over the whole year. And what I did was I converted for the rides, and this is at my home track, and also these temperatures are from a temperature station close to my home track. I converted the percent per minute into minute per percent. Yeah, so it's always around sort of half, but it's a little bit up and down, because that represents more, let's say, battery efficiency. Yeah, because if the battery is efficient, I get a higher number, and if the battery is less efficient, I get a somewhat lower number. And so that are the green bars that you see there in the graph as well. And that are my rides, and that is the average, let's say, efficiency that I had on that day. Now, if you look from a distance to this thing, you do want to see a little bit that curve in there. But to be honest, if you look a little bit in more detail, so what I did was I just divided into 3 areas. Yeah, so the middle area, I calculated for those rides the average temperature, that is the 19.1, and I call that 100%. Let's say that is the most efficient that we can get, at least last year. And then if we go to that side, that is opposite here, to that side in the diagram, we're in April, right? And in April, the average temperature is 9.3. So it's almost 10 degrees down. And if you then look to the percentage that I have there on top, that is then 90.1%. So you could say, could it be that 10% degree down from 20 degree means 9% down of the battery? Okay, I'm not 100% sure if that is the case, because if we go to the other end of the graph, yeah, there's something different going on, because there I averaged, let's say, around the October period, and that is then 13.1 degree down, so that's only 6 degree down. But if we look to the percentage that is on top, it is 80%. Yeah, how can that be? So it is less temperature, but 20% down the efficiency of the battery. So it cannot be that the percent difference what you see here is related to temperature. Well, yes, on one hand it will be related to temperature, but it's, I think, more the temperature influencing the track and making it harder, the sand or the surface. So the roll is easier, so to say, of the wheel. And I think there is something else going on. I mentioned that before. I think especially in the September-October area, I think we have something to do with moisture in the track. And for that reason, I created another diagram to sort of show that. So let's have a look. In this diagram, I look at the battery consumption versus the temperature and rainfall. The green bars show the average percent per minute for each moto at MC Rilland. And that is opposite from the previous diagram. So the red line is the average temperature on the ride day plus 2 days prior to the ride day. The blue line is a weighted rainfall index covering up to 6 days before the ride. And the large consumption spike in September coincides with substantial rainfall. So this suggests that wet track condition drove high consumption. Yeah, and you see in the 3 motos after September that thing is dropping off quite quickly, consumption. And you see at the end of October, the temperature is already 10 degrees down compared to, let's say, the top in, July. So the consumption is back to, let's say, 1.9. So, yeah, it is, I think, mostly the amount of moisture that influenced that track there the most, in combination with, let's say, some lower temperature, so that the drying takes a little bit more time. Yeah. You see the big spike in September. And to be honest, I looked at the driving footage, and it didn't seem that the track was so slick, because you can see that a little bit because of the ruts or something. I listened a little bit to the track talk that I recorded, and the one thing that I did hear me say that I put the pedal tire on. I think there's a lot of rain fallen yesterday, at least over here. The fall is coming, so there was quite some rain. I see also here and there it looks pretty wet, so I think we will have a grippy track. Yeah, so it's a lot of grip. Although I have my sand tire on, I do not know if that's a smart thing, yes or no, but we will see. The track was really sticky today. The sand tire, I think that was a good idea. It was a good grip here now. And if you think about it, yeah, a pedal tire is to increase friction or grip on the track. And I put the pedal tire on because I expected the track to be, yeah, almost muddy because there was that rain. So thinking about that, so if you put a pedal tire on, you have more grip. So if you gas it, I think you are going to use more energy than if it will just slip. Yeah, and I think that also explains a little bit the sort of extra peak that we have there. So we had more moisture in there. The temperature dropped a little bit, so could not dry that good during the day. And I had a pedal tire on. So there's three things going on that make the huge difference between, let's say, 3 August and 14 September in the consumption, yeah, in this graph. Okay. Knowing all this, so what kind of battery capacity would I ideally want? I have something, but what do I want? And in a perfect world, I would not need to bring a charger at all. Yeah, I would be happy if I could do 4 times a 20-minute ride on a demanding track condition. Yeah, so did some calculation. For me, the battery should be 12 kilowatts instead of 6.5 kilowatts. Yeah, it is not very realistic that someone will invent a new battery chemistry, yeah, with almost double the capacity at the same weight, because that I do not want a 12 kilowatts battery that is 2 times as heavy, yeah, because then the bike becomes even more heavy. It might be more feasible, that the Stark Future company will create a new bike and with a replaceable battery. And if I think about for myself, then that battery should be around 3 kilowatts. Well, because with a battery of 3 kilowatts, I can do, let's say, 20 minutes. Yeah, and then I buy 3 extra batteries. I charge them upfront at home. And I do a ride. I exchange the battery. I do a ride. I exchange the battery. And that's it. I have everything what I need. The advantage would also be if we have a 3 kilowatts battery in there, the bike becomes a little bit lighter because it's a pretty heavy bike. But yeah, I don't know. A real solution for today, that would be just buy a second bike. Yeah, if I think about it, if I would have a second bike, I think I will bring my charger. But if I'm honest, if I'm going to ride 4 times 20 minutes, I think I do not need to charge it. And with 2 bikes, I can do that. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about, yeah. So for who is this Stark Varg actually? Who should buy this or who should ride this? And I have to be honest, if I talk to people at the track, I always say, if you're an old guy, buy a Stark Varg. Yeah? If you have you also buy a good charger and you will have plenty of riding time during a day for an old man like me. Yeah? And it is way easier to ride a Stark Varg than it is to ride a gas bike. Yeah, I do feel that it is simpler to ride the Stark Varg. Last year, a dad comes over to me and he's asking me about this Stark Varg, and he says, "Yeah, would it be something for my 15-year-old son?" I said to him, "Yeah, depends on how fast he is." And yeah, he could not really say that, and he did not look at my riding speed, so he could not really compare that. But most of the 15 years old, and some even on the 80cc, are quicker than me on the track. So in that situation, I would not recommend to buy a Stark Varg. Yeah, the limited range will frustrate that 15-year-old. So I think, as the Stark Varg is nowadays, it is not a bike for a guy of 15 years old. I also do not think it is a bike for younger people, where they are smaller than me. I do think you need to be at least 15, 16. You must have a little bit of muscle, because if you throw that bike on the floor, you cannot get it up, because it is a heavy bike. It is 120 kilogram, and yeah, you should be able to pick it up if you are going to ride the bike. Another example, that is, I'm a member of the Moto Academy, and in the Moto Academy people post videos, and one person is called Julie, and Julie is an adult woman, and she recently started motocross. And she indicated to me, because I asked her, "So yeah, what do you think about the Stark Varg? How do you feel about the bike?" And she really indicated, "Oh, it's really the perfect bike for me, because I started just with very low horsepower, and so you do not get scared of the bike, and yeah, you don't have to think about clutching, shifting. It's just focus on balance, standing, and steering. Yeah, and then over time you can increase a little bit the power so that you can increase your speed." Now, I think that is also one of the reasons that I bought the Stark Varg. It is so that I can focus on technique, and to be honest, I figured out when driving that bike, it gives you a lot of confidence. Yeah. All of a sudden, I was driving inside corners, and with my gas bike, I just didn't dare to do that, because I was afraid that I was going to tip over. Yeah, because you always have power, and that makes it so much easier to do riding ruts, stuff like that. If you're like me and you're like, "Okay, I want to buy this Stark, and I want to work with the Stark on technique, but I also want to still drive the gas bike," I do recommend that you ride both. So 1 week maybe the Stark Varg, next week the gas bike. Because if you are not doing that, you are going to, yeah, sort of unprogram yourself from doing the shifting. And I did that in the beginning of the year. I think the first half year I did not drive my gas bike. And then after half year I took my gas bike, because they expected rain. And so I took my gas bike to the track, and I said, I do not know how to shift anymore. Yeah, so do keep that in mind. If you want to get rid of gas bikes, yeah, entirely, I can also imagine that. I can only recommend to buy two Stark Varg MX1 bikes, and I would, yeah, if you can afford, do it new. But if you cannot afford, just buy a second hand, because I think the bikes stay good. And it is the normal maintenance of, let's say, chain, tires, and suspension. But that's it. If you have more money to spend, you can buy the MX1.2. But just buy it for the extra features. Yeah? Do not buy it for the bigger battery, because that bigger battery that you have, that is only 5 minutes of ride time. Yeah, so that doesn't add so much, I think. Yeah, I think if you look at the numbers, 2 times a second-hand MX1 bike is almost the price of one MX1.2. Yeah, so I leave that a little bit up to you.